"I have a bridge to sell you. Would you be willing to buy it?" This phrase has engraved itself into our vernacular in the form of an idiom referring to a person who is exceptionally gullible, but its origins can be traced back to one man from 1800s New York City who proved that many people would be willing to buy it, again and again and again. New York City is jam-packed with incredible architecture, art, and monuments, adding to an air of grandeur. It has a deep history of being a welcoming point for those that were seeking the land of opportunity. From 1892 to 1924, Ellis Island was America's largest and most active immigration station, with over 12 million hopeful immigrants passing through it with dreams of starting anew as Americans. But many devious and cunning individuals were well aware of this dream and sought to prey on those who had risked everything to begin a new chapter of their lives in the United States. So keep in mind that if something sounds too good to be true, it most certainly is, as we learn something new. The Brooklyn Bridge, which connects the two boroughs of Manhattan and Brooklyn via the New York City East River, was a monumental undertaking to construct. It was the brainchild of John Augustus Roebling, who had immigrated from Germany in 1831. After building bridges in a variety of places, including Niagara Falls and Cincinnati, Ohio, he would get approval to work on one of his most innovative projects yet, building the first steel suspension bridge, boasting the longest span in the world at the time, 1,600 feet from tower to tower. While Roebling wouldn't see the final product, having died of tetanus after a boat smashed into his toes, his son would go on to complete the project as its chief engineer. The construction of the bridge was expensive, and it ended up being very deadly to the workers who were hired to build it. In fact, the first cases of the bends, a decompression sickness that often occurs from going from high-pressure water to low pressure too quickly, was found in the workers of the Brooklyn Bridge, as they went as far as 78 feet below the surface of the river to use shovels and dynamite to clear the mud and boulders away. The bridge would finally be completed in May of 1883, costing a total of $15.5 million to construct, as well as the lives of 27 workers. The grand opening of the bridge didn't go exactly according to plan. Because the bridge was the longest suspension bridge in the world at the time, a portion of the public were skeptical that something that long would even hold up to the weight of those on it. Soon after its opening, a woman tripped and fell while walking across, causing another nearby woman to scream, believing it would be all that was needed to collapse the bridge. Panic ensued, causing the entire crowd to stampede. In total, there were 12 dead, with 7 seriously injured. To quell these fears, the city hired none other than famous circus founder P.T. Barnum to lead a parade of his heaviest animals across it. And so, on May 17, 1884, he did just that, marching 21 elephants and 17 camels across the bridge, which held the weight without any issues whatsoever. Since the bridge was completed in 1883, the idea of illegally selling it has become the ultimate example of the power of persuasion. At the turn of the century, a confidence man, or con man for short, named George C. Parker actually sold the Brooklyn Bridge more than once. He would also go on to sell the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Statue of Liberty, and Ulysses S. Grant's tomb, producing forged documents in an attempt to prove that he was the bridge's rightful owner, all the while luring people in with the idea that they could make a fortune by controlling access to the roadway. George C. Parker was one of 8 children born to his Irish parents in New York on March 16, 1860, with his only notable early life accomplishment being that he finished high school. In the 1880s, New York was a melting pot of every ethnic group from every corner of the planet. At the time, millions of immigrants seeking better lives entered the United States through its Golden Door, better known as Ellis Island. Largely impoverished and hopeful for a chance at the American dream, these immigrants were perfect targets for opportunistic tricksters like Parker. Parker's Brooklyn Bridge con likely began in the 1880s. The ruse was relatively simple. He would scout out marks who had recently arrived in New York City, convince them that he owned the Brooklyn Bridge, and sell it to these eager investors for as much as $50,000. The way it worked was that Parker would approach unsuspecting immigrants, engaging them in casual conversation, introducing himself as the owner of the Brooklyn Bridge, and as soon as he felt he had their trust, Parker would propose erecting toll booths. He would then go on to explain that he was looking for someone trustworthy to work in the booths. A job offer would soon be made, and the target would be delighted to accept. Parker would then escort the unlucky immigrant to the Brooklyn Bridge, which was the preferred location for the scam for several reasons. First, it was fairly close to the port, making it highly visible to newcomers. Once Parker would take them there, they already would have likely seen it on the way into New York City. It was also a large enough landmark that they could tour it easily while avoiding any potential law enforcement in the area. The biggest draw, however, was most likely its fame. Second only to the Statue of Liberty, the Brooklyn Bridge was said to be one of the best-known symbols of America at the time. On arrival, the target would invariably spot the sign "Bridge for Sale" pinned to the structure of the bridge. Parker would then reveal the bridge was for sale and that for a reasonable price could be theirs to own and charge as they wished, earning a fortune. For the ruse, Parker had offices set up near the bridge and used counterfeit deeds. He would then negotiate a price ranging from $75 to $50,000. Now, a common question that would always come up during these negotiations is that if this is such a great opportunity, why hadn't Parker already taken advantage of such an obvious gold mine? His simple response: "I am a bridge builder, not a bridge owner." And for most people, that was good enough for them. Soon, the new faux owners would try and set up their toll booths on the roadway, but their new venture was destined to fail. Police would shut down their attempts to control the road, and all their dreams of getting rich off drivers' pocket change were dashed. Eventually, processors at Ellis Island started handing out cards to new arrivals, warning them, "You can't buy public buildings or streets." But that wouldn't stop Parker from trying. He successfully sold Madison Square Garden, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Ulysses S. Grant's tomb, and the Statue of Liberty multiple times over. Parker was a career criminal by any measure, going far beyond the bridge itself. At times, he posed as a prison warden or the captain of a ship. He had at least 6 pseudonyms, including James J. O'Brien, Warden Kennedy, Mr. Roberts, and Mr. Taylor. In 1928, the New York Times reported that a man named William McCloundy, also known as IOU O'Brien, was arrested. As it turns out, this was just another one of Parker's aliases. In this case, one he used to sell 10 lots of land that he did not own. Detectives found Parker measuring a backyard in Ashbury Park. If they hadn't caught him, he might have succeeded in selling the place for $17,000. But he couldn't avoid getting caught. In fact, he went to jail several times for larceny, forgery, and impersonating a police officer. Although justice would eventually be served, Parker had gotten away with his swindles for nearly 30 years, until 1928, when he was sentenced to life in prison for his crimes. Even in the 9 years locked up before his death, he claimed that his time in prison saw him treated like a king by other prisoners who had admired his work. He would go on to state that his efforts were well rewarded, and that he was able to successfully sell the bridge about twice a week, going for an average of $5,000 each sale, over $160,000 in today's money. Though, I will leave it up to you how much of those numbers is Parker's own embellishment. So, you may think that with Parker locked up, that was the end of people using the Brooklyn Bridge for their own personal gain. However, the immigrants would not be so lucky. The news of the swindle had spread, and others were more than happy to fill the hole that George Parker had left behind. The Gondorf brothers, Charlie and Fred, would perform the Brooklyn Bridge scam several times, being sure to perfectly time the increasing amounts of police patrols so their negotiations wouldn't be interrupted. Eventually, however, due to an increased police presence and awareness campaign, targets would become increasingly difficult to find, and so the swindle began to dwindle. It's an unfortunate truth of life that where trust and naivety meet, there will always be those willing to slip in and take advantage, leaving behind less naivety, less trust, and less money. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like down below. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks again, and I will see you in the next one.